to welcome to the stage Colin Matthews, the Chief Executive Officer of Heathrow Airport. He joined the board of Heathrow Airport in September 2008. He's an experienced FTSE 100 CEO who's led a number of service and industrial businesses in several countries. This includes Group Chief Executive of Severn Trent, Managing Director of BA Engineering for BA, Executive Director of Gas Transmission Business Lattice Group, and Group Chief Officer of the Global Management Consultancy Hayes Group. He's going to make the case for expansion at Heathrow and will set out his proposal for one new, fully independent 3,500-metre runway to the northwest of the airport. Colin.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much indeed for the opportunity to talk about Heathrow's proposal. It's dramatically different from the one you just heard, and I'm very happy to have it exposed to the Commission's scrutiny and to your scrutiny. By the way, none of the proposals are easy. Therefore, I want to start by making sure we've got our heads around just what's at stake. And on this chart are 24 important cities around the world, important economically, and they've got something in common. What they've got in common is they all have direct flights to Europe, but not one of them has a direct flight to the UK. That's remarkably consistent, actually, with a report from the OECD last year, which said that if Heathrow had adequate capacity, we would serve something between 20 and 30 more destinations. Let me just calibrate that for you. Around the world, there are 6 airports that serve more than 50 long-haul destinations. Heathrow serves around about 90. So 20 to 30 more long-haul destinations is a dramatic increase in the connectivity of the UK to those long-haul marketplaces. And that surely is exactly the task that the Commission, Sir Howard Davis's Commission, was set up to confront. How do we protect and indeed improve the UK's connectivity? And it's those long-haul markets which are the source of economic growth around the world. Those are the connections that matter economically. I'm sure if you asked 10 economists, you would get 10 different answers to the value of that. We asked economists, we commissioned some work, and it put the value at £14 billion of lost trade every year today because of inadequate capacity at our hub airport. I've mentioned the word hub already. I've used the word hub and network in the debate over recent years a lot. And some say that we have exaggerated the network argument, we've exaggerated the hub argument. But I think that right at the heart of the debate between Gatwick and Heathrow is this hub argument. Now, let me be clear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that a hub or Heathrow is better than point-to-point airports. I'm saying it serves a different marketplace. I'm not saying the marketplace we serve is more important. Think about the amazing connectivity to short-haul marketplaces that Ryanair, EasyJet, other low-cost carriers have brought. Amazing benefits to the UK. And if we need new capacity to serve that marketplace, that's important for the UK. Stuart is right. But actually, the shortage of capacity today is not principally for low-cost carriers. It is for those long-haul destinations. And when it comes to the long-haul destinations, airlines need to fly their aircraft pretty full, not just on Sunday nights, but every day of the week. And there are 2 challenges with that market segment of people who start or end the journey here in the UK. One is that the sheer volume of them is not enough to support many of the routes. That would be true for, say, for Hyderabad. But there's a less obvious and more important characteristic. The volume is just too variable. So if you have the right capacity for a Sunday night when people want to travel the Atlantic on business, you'll have the wrong capacity on a Wednesday night. What network airlines do to make sure that they fly full every day of the year is to fill the remainder of the aircraft with transfer traffic. Transfer traffic is price elastic, and therefore they can do that. In some ways, therefore, the chart I've put on the wall is a little bit misleading because it shows you a static picture. I think it's Mexico City. It shows where the transfer traffic comes from. evidently that flight is not economically viable without transfer traffic. The reason it's misleading is that the effectiveness of transfer traffic is it's anything between 5 or 10% on a flight up to 80% on a flight. It's its variability that means throughout the year, every day of the year, every route, we can maintain higher load factors than a point-to-point airport can. And that is why, although many airlines have tried over the years to make long-haul flights economically viable from other airports, they turn out not to be so. So Heathrow today is a fundamental, important aspect in the global race for trade, the global race for jobs, because it connects us to cities around the world. Top left are the destinations and the spread of destinations to the entire world from Heathrow. Bottom right are the entire total of other UK airports. Fully close to 80% of long-haul travel from the UK happens from Heathrow. And despite the fact that Heathrow is so full, airlines have tried and failed to make sustainable, economically viable routes from other airports. Why not then? If one hub is good, why not have a second hub? And the problem is, we've tried this before in this country twice, it doesn't work. That was in the case of Gatwick. There's another more dramatic example, I think, which is to look at Tokyo. One of the challenges is, if we make this decision today, it's going to be decades before we know the consequence. Now, decades ago, Tokyo ran out of capacity at Haneda, and so it built a new airport at Narita. In those days, Tokyo was the leading hub in Asia. We have the advantage in the case of Tokyo of being able to see the results of 30, 40 years since then. Tokyo is no longer the leading hub in Asia. It has gone down to number 7 or 8. I'm not sure exactly where today. It was 7 a year or so ago. And it has handed its crown to its principal economic competitor, which is South Korea, who have invested in a fantastic airport, which wins many prizes as a hub, which is Incheon. And by the way, I agree with the Airport Commission report, which suggests that persuading an alliance to move from Heathrow to another airport, you can do it, they'll move, but not to another airport in the UK. They'll move to Paris, they'll move to Amsterdam, they'll move to Frankfurt. But my suggestion, if you don't believe me, ask those airlines. Now, when people have accepted the argument to that level, they quite often will say to me, but frankly, get real, Heathrow's in the wrong place. You wouldn't put Heathrow where it is today, would you? It's just too busy. That is getting the cart yards in front of the horse. The reason it's so busy around Heathrow today is because a hub is a magnet for economic activity. And because it's a magnet for economic activity, people want to live close to it. And therefore, Heathrow is in the right place. There are a couple of obvious dimensions of this. Look at the weighted average postcode of people traveling. You'll find it's Beaconsfield. That's not far away. We are fantastically well connected to the nation's motorway system, the M25, the M4, the M1, the M40, the M3, and so on. But there's a much more significant bit of infrastructure which is less evident, and it's represented on this chart. That is, if you take the 300 most important business headquarters in the UK, more than 2/3 of them are within 25 miles of Heathrow. So we're absolutely plugged into the infrastructure of the UK, including the business infrastructure. We're not in the wrong place. We're in the right place. Rail access is fundamentally important today, and even more important as we get permission to expand. Today, we have a great connection in Heathrow Express to Paddington. Crossrail will shortly mean that we have a direct connection from Heathrow, not just to Paddington, but throughout the centre of London, to Canary Wharf and beyond. A real step improvement in the rail connection to Heathrow. Next step, it's in the plans, by the way, this next one, is if you imagine coming out of Heathrow on a train, today you have to turn east into the middle of London. Why not turn west? Well, you could. You could bring the communities of Reading, Bristol, Plymouth, Cardiff way closer to Heathrow, and that is going to happen, I believe. Slightly further in the future, whatever the precise, detailed route of HS2 to the north, people in the middle and the north of the country will have a quicker, more convenient way of getting to Heathrow, and that will bring more passengers to Heathrow, not less, by the way. And finally, it only takes 5 kilometres of track from Heathrow south to Staines to connect us into the South West Trains network, which operates out of Waterloo into a large swathe of southern England. So that is the basis on which we can get today's 40% of passengers who come to Heathrow on public transport and get that ratio up to 50%. Surely, though, we know from the debate already this morning that the key issue is noise. When I first started my job 6 years ago, people would say that we were arguing about technology that hadn't yet been invented. You can't say that today. We have 787s and A380s landing at Heathrow today in large numbers, and they are replacing much noisier aircraft. And we know what the delivery schedule for those new aircraft are, so we know that aircraft are getting quieter. This isn't speculation about future technology, it's happening today. Secondly, we can operate the aircraft more quietly. Some of that has already happened, continuous descent. Other will happen. Aircraft navigation systems are much more precise today, and NATs will be able to control much more precisely where the aircraft are flying, and by that we can impose less noise. Thirdly, the policy exchanges proposal, which moved the whole airport west, made it clear just how much of an advantage from a noise point of view heading west is. And you can see in our proposal, the northwest solution does move west. That reduces the noise impact of that additional capacity. Respite is a fundamentally important aspect, we believe, to local residents, and having 3 runways will increase, an adequate capacity, will increase the predictability, the reliability of our offer of respite to communities around about. Finally, I've no doubt that permission to expand Heathrow would come with improved installation schemes on the ground. So here it is. Actually, we made 3 proposals to the Commission. The reason we made 3 is the choice between them, we believe, depended on the relative weight, the relative importance you placed on noise, property, and cost issues. And we're really pleased that the Commission selected 1 out of those. Obviously, that reduces uncertainty for communities around Heathrow, allows us to focus our effort on developing this option. Here it is in a little bit more detail. You can see just to the west of Terminal 5 a new terminal, Terminal 6. You can see the satellites serving a new runway, and the runway itself, which is between the M4 and the existing runways. And that runway does indeed have impacts on property. It does indeed impact the junction of the M25 and the M4. So since we published that, we've been refining it. We've been looking at an alternative. We'll continue to do that, by the way. And we believe we can move the runway south somewhat, such that it reduces the impact on buildings, in particular the listed buildings, and can avoid the interfering with the M4, M25 intersection. The key thing in optimizing this solution is we need to understand better than we do today the real weight that residents put on those different characteristics. And it is for that reason that on the 3rd of February, we're starting a major new piece of consultation locally. We will send letters to 120,000 businesses and residences, and we will have town hall meetings where we can learn much more precisely than we do today what residents value most importantly, and we will use that information progressively to optimize that northwest solution. Here are 10 dimensions of the costs and the benefit. And you can see 3 columns of figures. The left-hand one is Heathrow today with 2 runways. The middle one is the Northwest proposal according to our own assessment. And the right-hand column is our proposal according to the Airports Commission assessment. And I'm pleased to say that they're largely aligned. I'm glad that we agree on the very significant increase in capacity that expansion of Heathrow will give. I'm also glad, by the way, and I think this is unique amongst the options, that the estimate of cost that the Commission put, they put a range on it actually, agreed with our spot estimate. Looking down below, of course, it's a full-length runway. Interesting, the Airport Commission thought we were being overly conservative when it comes to the impact of noise, and that's encouraging. The line below that, in terms of properties lost, there's a difference in that line. I believe the explanation is quite simple. We looked at a map and counted individual houses. I believe the Commission have taken an average housing density and multiplied it by the land take. So I'm sure we can resolve that difference pretty quickly. We will continue to optimize that solution, but there are 10 things that we will not change, and these are the commitments. They're public, we've published them before. They're really, really important commitments, and I'm not going to grind through every single one of the 10, but I will pick out 3 importantly today. The first one is the Heathrow proposal will protect jobs. Not just the more than 100,000 local jobs, not just the multiple of indirect jobs dependent on Heathrow locally, but the national employment figure that is based on the connectivity, the improvement in connectivity that comes from our solution. Secondly, we will reduce the noise impact at the same time as we add capacity. And thirdly, now this issue is not going to go away. Actually, it'll outlive the current economic challenges. The environmental concerns, we will hit the environmental limits. We believe we can. Indeed, no proposal is going to get planning permission which doesn't. But we can, we believe, sit within the Climate Change Commission limits, and we can sit within air quality limits as well. I want to end, though, on one final point. When in debates I have brought someone along with me, sometimes the final answer is, yes, Colin, we see all that. It's a good case, but frankly, it is politically undeliverable. We don't agree. We asked Populous to survey 7,000 residents, 1,000 in each of the constituencies around about. Represented on this chart is the answer to one of those questions. It says, if your local MP supported Heathrow expansion, would you be more likely to vote for him or more likely to vote against him? For him in green, against him in red. So is it an electoral advantage to support expansion, or is it an electoral disaster to support expansion? Well, let's start on the left of this chart. In Richmond, Zach Goldsmith is absolutely right, it wouldn't be. In all of the other 6 constituencies, from this data, it shows that a particular prospective candidate who will increase his chances by being in support of Heathrow. So we do not believe that Heathrow is politically undeliverable. We've got an amazing amount of work to develop the Northwest option still to do. We don't have all the answers today, but we do believe it's politically deliverable. We believe it offers unique advantages in excess of any of the other options, and we believe it's environmentally sustainable. So we warmly support the work of the Commission and indeed people in this room to scrutinise our proposal, compare it with the other proposals, and to do what is the job of the Commission, which is not to propose a solution that suits one particular airport, but to propose a solution that suits the United Kingdom. Thank you.
Thank you. Come to the seat, expert panel. Just before the expert panel kicks off, Colin, one thing that was touched on this morning, well, not touched on, discussed, was air quality, and of course Heathrow breaches air quality at the moment. How are you going to make sure that any expansion is not going to, in fact, is going to reverse the breach in air quality?
Well, I believe probably, I don't know this for sure, probably we breached air quality by this roundabout we're sat on. We certainly,
Two blacks don't make a white.
Well, but Marylebone High Street is higher, twice as high as Heathrow. The reason for that is because the source of that pollution is diesel engines. And what we need to do to fix the emissions air quality around Heathrow and in central London is to replace the fleet of diesel engines. So we can do so, but it's not something that aviation can do on its own. Aviation isn't the principal source of that pollution. So yes, we can fit within those limits.
Okay, let's kick off and let's start with Paul.
Well, thank you for asking me first question. Noise. It's a big challenge at Heathrow. Lots of people, you make a claim that this can be noise neutral, roughly, in your submission. There's increasing concern about not just the disturbance caused by noise, but the health effects caused by noise, the physiological consequences of noise exposure, particularly at night. Could this become the critical environmental threshold for you if it isn't air quality?
Well, actually, we're claiming an improvement in noise, not neutral. We're claiming an improvement, 15%, as we expand. And it's a tough job of the Commission to weigh up all of the issues. They should look at the best data, the latest data on all of those dimensions. And by the way, actually, presumably in that, they're going to include the health consequences of unemployment. You know, so there is a health consequence to the economic dimension here. It's a tough job for the Airports Commission to weigh those issues up. That's what they need to do, though.
Paul.
Thank you. Briefly, it's good that you've got Crossrail going there, and it's good that you've potentially got the Western Rail access. From a surface access perspective, even after all the above, and moving from a 40% public transport mode share to a 50% mode share, you're still going to have a significant increase in road traffic in that area. What do you look for others to do by way of road transportation to support the all-new expansion?
Well, actually, our assessment is we wouldn't have more car access. I'm not sure the Airports Commission evaluation was completely in alignment, but our assessment was that we would have the same level by increasing the proportion of passengers who come on public transport instead of by cars. If you're referring to the cost dimension, in our proposal, between 4 to 6 billion is associated with infrastructure spends outside the boundary of the airport, and at least historically those spends on roads have been paid for not by the airport. But those amounts there are a tiny fraction of what is being proposed in some of the other proposals.
So just checking, therefore, that is the amount of public subsidy which you expect to be getting. Because in addition, as I mentioned with Gatwick, there are all these sunk costs. Yes, you say you might not need a lot more road improvements to get people in, but you already got them and are benefiting very hugely from what's there already.
Well, and vice versa. You know, the local communities benefit from Heathrow being there. It's not traditionally the case that airports are viewed as having received a subsidy because a road exists. I don't think that's a fair representation of the spend. The west of London needs infrastructure, and some of the traffic using it, of course, comes to the airport and for many other things as well. But the reason it's busy around Heathrow is because of the business that is attracted to the west of London because Heathrow is there.
So would you be paying for something extra for the rail connections? Because, of course, there will need to be possibly an expansion in actual capacity that would be required there. I mean, who's going to bear that cost? And against that, the benefits of not having Heathrow, for example, such as development, a lot of them would accrue, of course, to the private sector, development benefits, and then the other stuff we were discussing earlier today with the other option, a new sort of city, if you like, out there. Have you weighed those at all in your cost-benefit analysis?
Well, I think the Airports Commission is the right body to weigh up all those issues. Of course we have. I think if you take 114,000 direct jobs, let alone the indirect jobs, out of that arena, I'm not sure that we're going to need any new property. So I don't think you should waste the money in redeveloping Heathrow. I would suggest you just leave it empty for some decades.
Simon.
May I take up the passenger's position from the point of view of anybody who's changed planes at Heathrow, which I know many of us will not have done. But look, it's a real journey of discovery. For example, you fly into Terminal 1 on Virgin Little Red, and then you're either transferring to Terminal 3 for Virgin Atlantic or Terminal 4 for Delta, which obviously is now part owner of Virgin Atlantic. British Airways, even with Terminal 5, there's a good chance you're going to end up at Terminal 1 or Terminal 3. And if anybody wants to lose the will to live, or at least to travel, then try Terminal 5 to Terminal 4. It is quicker to walk. I have checked it. Now, with your new Terminal 6, I think this is a little bit too much sellotape and string. And that for the transfer passengers who you say are so important, they're simply going to go to Paris, Amsterdam, Frankfurt, etc. because, frankly, life is too short to connect from Terminal 6 to Terminal 4.
Well, Simon, that's not what passengers say. If you look at the assessment that is made, of course it's an advantage to Amsterdam that they have a single terminal. It is. We have to work incredibly hard to try and catch them up. Actually, passengers, if you look at how they rate us better than Amsterdam for direct passengers, slightly less good for transferring. It's an issue. But by the way, that's why we're investing in Terminal 2, so that we can bring all of the Star Alliance's airlines into one terminal, so that the majority of transfer traffic, as is the case today actually, is within single terminals rather than between. I agree that's a competitive disadvantage for us versus Amsterdam. But who is going to suggest that given the economic...
And they've got a lovely art gallery in the middle of Schiphol as well.
Well, why not? But wait till you see the new Terminal 2. Who's going to suggest that because of that, we should give up the fight and let Holland take that magnet benefit, the hub benefit from the UK of having all of the business that takes place in the UK around Heathrow because we're a hub? Shall we just give that to Amsterdam because they have a single terminal? I don't think so. We can make a good experience for passengers. Gatwick's got better in the last 5 years. Heathrow's got better in the last 5 years. We have to, because we compete not with airports in the UK, with Paris, with Amsterdam. We have to win.
I take you back to your local air quality answer, which, and I take the point that we're all in it together, but it was the Achilles heel of the North Runway. What's changed compared to that option?
I don't think it was. You know, in the Volcano, we had no flying for a period of time, and we could measure the impact. And on the sensors that were closest to the airport, there was a discernible decrease of 30%. Beyond those, there was no discernible increase. The principal driver of air quality issues is diesel engines going down the M4. That's what we need to grapple with. That's there anyway. And so, no, it wasn't the Achilles heel. Thank you.
Vicky.
Could I then check again on the cost and finance side? Are you saying that it's all manageable and can be privately raised and financed, basically? But of course, you have to charge somebody for it if that's what you do, unless you think that revenues will expand to such an extent that you'll be able to allocate it across. But so, what are your projections on how you do it?
That is a vital question because there are two parts. One, can you fund it? Can you raise the money? Secondly, can you pay it back? The funding can come from global wealth funds, national wealth funds, whatever it is, from Singapore, from China, from Qatar. So it's not that there's a shortage of those, and yes, we can finance them privately. But ultimately, to pay that money back, it's the passengers. And in the case of expanding Gatwick, I think it is that EasyJet has more than 50% of the flying there today. So on that basis, they would need to be paying a very significant part of the additional cost. Are they willing to do that? I think you asked the question. I think that's the key question. In the case of Heathrow, yes, we would need a different profile of prices to do that, but it is not doubling the prices. It is affordable. Yes, we've looked at it. We'll continue to work on it. When you look at the costs, you need to be sure if you're talking about including inflation or excluding inflation, of course. And over the periods of time we're talking about, inflation will move charges a large amount anyway, or could do. Yes, it's affordable for airlines, and yes, it's fundable.
So, okay, just confirm, you're going to pay for the Heathrow Inc. or whatever is going to pay for the airport expansion, but all the services roundabout and the surface structures are only be part funded. You're not prepared to put up those.
We talked about a total project which is around £16 billion, and within that, 4 to 6 is for infrastructure outside the airport, and we think historically those sorts of investments have been borne publicly. That's not to say that we know for sure what the decisions will be taken in the future, but that's our position. If you look at the other proposals, then the investment in infrastructure, some of them would be multiples higher. But yes, traditionally, airports have not built the roads which bring passengers to them. But that's in our proposal. It's a modest amount. The economic benefits that come to the UK from having a hub and that would come to the UK from having a hub with added capacity vastly outweigh those sums. Of course, it vastly outweighs any benefit to the airport too.
Thank you very much indeed, Colin. We'll be hearing from Colin again when it comes to the question and answer from the audience. We can release our expert panel and hear from our final submission.